أقدمه بالإنجليزي؟
لا ترانسليت. اسمع.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for gathering here on behalf of all those whom we love them in Sudan under this dictatorship government. And we're going to have Mr. David Kalgar. He's a very old friend and loyal, not only for Sudanese, but for all the humanitarian cases in the world. We are proud that even he's retired, is still standing here with us. Thank you, David, for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming today. Merci d'être venu à Ottawa. Who is from Ottawa? Can you raise your hands? Who's from Toronto? Who's from Who's from Montreal? Qui est venu de Montréal? Okay, they aren't arrived yet? Who's from London? Who's from Kitchener? Okay, how about Windsor? Who's from Windsor? What have I forgotten?
Hamilton.
This is very important that you're doing this. You may not have thought that the people you just spoke to were listening, but there are a lot of people in that building that are watching out. This is lunchtime, who are coming out. I used to work in this building for 7 years, in the 7th floor in the corner office over there. These demonstrations, when people come from different cities, are very, very effective. I will put this talk on my website, and I'll put it on Facebook. How many of you are on Facebook? Everybody, well, please let's become friends on Facebook, and I have 4,000 friends. I'd be delighted to have all of you. Okay, listen, this is a short talk. It should be much, much longer, but I know you're all standing and you've driven a long way, so I'll be as brief as I can. If anyone thinks I'm going on too long, raise their hand and I'll cut right down.
No. Could someone translate, because we are emitting this to like streaming. زول ترجم معاه للتسجيل بينبيس طوال على السودان بيسمعوه. زول ترجم معاه الناس already بيشوفوا الكلام ده.
Okay. Well, I started doing this morning or last night, this morning about 5 o'clock, and you'll hear me quoting Eric Reeves. Does everybody here know who Eric Reeves is?
We do.
Yes, we do.
He has a very serious disease. I think it's leukemia. He works on this issue, as you know, about 24 hours a day.
And we pray for him.
I pray for him too, and I think he's a marvelous person. Nobody watches Sudan, maybe except all of you, more closely in the U.S. than he does.
Could you translate, because you are streaming this live now. بس مختصر. ترجم بدون ميكروفون. الناس اللي بيشوفوا السودان.
Just tell me when you want me to stop and I'll hand it over.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Let me give some of what Professor Reeves has been saying, and I share his views fully, and I'm sure all of you do too. I hope they share it in the building. Anyway, what Eric Reeves has said about the uprising in the last 2 days. First of all, Reeves quotes the historian Douglas Johnson in an interview that Johnson gave to the Voice of America in Nairobi. He says that he hasn't seen such protests in Khartoum, in Sudan, since the 2 previous governments were toppled in the 60s and 80s. Wouldn't it be wonderful if Bashir could be toppled?
Yes. Bashir must go. Bashir must go.
And he emphasizes, Johnson does, that the protests have spread beyond the capital of Khartoum. He goes on, and I'm quoting here, I don't know if the demonstrations are being coordinated, but that is an indication of a rising sea of discontent. What we've got to have in Sudan for this to be successful is one will have to have a public that has nothing left to fear, and I'm sure you're all worried about that. And I think we're beginning to see that. And 2, you've got to see a loss of morale in the security services. I don't know if you've seen that yet, he goes on, but these 2 combined are what brought down the 2 previous military governments in 64 and 85. You want to translate that?
أول مرة من بعد أكتوبر وأبريل هذا الكاتب يشهد انتفاضة بهذا الحجم وهي مسألة جادة وحتكون عندها آثار.
Okay. Reeves quotes Nazreen Malik writing in The Guardian online on October the 1st, and I'm quoting, "While the numbers remain small," she said, "two things stand out. The anger has crossed the class divide, and most..."
الغضب ممتد لمدن كثيرة وعبر التقسيم الطبقي للمجتمع.
And most distressingly, the number of protesters shot and killed by government security forces has been unprecedented. You all know that.
عدد
It's an utter tragedy.
الضحايا اللي أطلق عليهم الرصاص ماتوا بإطلاق الرصاص لم يسبق أن حدث في السودان.
There have been too many deaths close to home, she says, including, we heard this morning, children. It's terrible.
teenagers.
Reeves then quite reasonably stresses, and I quote again, "There has been to date a conspicuous failure of the international community to respond with remotely adequate condemnation of the regime for its bloody tactics." Some of you were just saying that across the street to the two diplomats who came out.
لم يجد النظام رد فعل مناسب لحجم الجرائم من المجتمع العالمي.
Or to offer even moral support for those attempting to liberalize political conditions in Sudan. Karim Lahija, is it Lahiji, president of the International Federation for Human Rights, put this bluntly, quote, "The international community," he said, "has too often provided inadequate responses to serious violations of human rights in Sudan. The African Union must take the lead and respond to the current crisis with the gravity it requires," right?
Yes.
Good. "By urgently sending a commission of inquiry," and who was it who was asking for a commission of inquiry across the street? One of you.
Yes, we all lost.
Good. Okay. Reeves, no doubt, who I said is the closest American observer of Sudan, continues, quote, "Time after time, U.S. action or inaction has contributed to crises, particularly in the Arab world and Africa. Russia is reported to have discouraged debate the UN Security Council on the uprising in Sudan. Mr. Putin, we can always count on him, can't we? This would appear to forestall Security Council involvement for the foreseeable future, despite the urgency of the situation on the ground in Sudan. Russia has sold huge quantities of expensive armaments to the government of Sudan, including, as I'm sure you all know, MiG-29 advanced fighter aircraft, deadly helicopter gunships, and maintenance and piloting contracts." Can you give a summary of that?
الاتحاد السوفيتي وبوتين بالذات أو سوري مش روسيا الآن بتقف مع النظام وبتعارض مناقشة اتخاذ إجراءات ضده في الأمم المتحدة ومجلس الأمن. وهم روسيا باعت للسودان لحكومة البشير العديد من الأسلحة منها طائرات الميج الفتاكة وطائرات الهليكوبتر المقاتلة اللي هي بتفتك بالمواطنين في مختلف أنحاء السودان.
By the way, I'll send this to the Minister of Foreign Affairs and to the Prime Minister and to the MPs and Senators, so they'll at least have...
Thank you so much.
Reeves goes on. "The signal now being sent to the regime in Khartoum is that it can expect forceful condemnation by human rights groups, fully expected, tepid criticism from the US and EU, a point of concern in the regime's calculations, I might add, from Canada too, ambiguous commentary from the Arab League countries, but nothing of significance from international actors with the power to bring pressure to bear in Khartoum to halt its bloody repression and to address the underlying causes of the uprising." Somebody else do it?
سوريا.
بشير الباقي ما قادر يصور
هاي واحد ترجم.
اوكي
Okay. We